Okay, welcome back. Did anybody join me for a global game jam? Yeah, some of us did. I hope for those that did, you had a good time. And if you need an extension, you know I'm good for it. So I understand that jams like that can sometimes put your homework a little to the back burner. Yeah, yeah. All right, so why don't we go ahead and open up Maya, start powering that stuff on. I took my own advice this time. We're gonna keep going on Bender. And let's see here, just to like a recap on the assignment, we've got this due tomorrow at 10, so we want to try to get through this today. If you need an extension, please say so. To let me know by tomorrow by 10 to get it without any problems or questions asked or anything like that. Okay, so that means we have to finish this thing today. Got to finish it. Before I get started on this, do we have any questions burning that we might not have recorded? Did we find a problem that came up? Or was it, nope, doesn't look like it. What's that? It means you've probably opened it in a newer version of Maya somewhere and you're trying to open it now. That is a problem. So, oh, that's okay. I will say though that if you're concerned about versions in Maya, like if you have a newer version at home that you're working on or something like that, you can export the FBX and import that into any version. So that will, same problem actually, and not as easy a solution. You have to be able to open this version of Substance. Okay, that's okay. I'm not mad. All right. Yes.
What information was lost, I would say.
Great question. Great question. So when you export an FBX, what you're exporting from Maya is the mesh data and the UV mapping that it has. And that is about it. You're not exporting any of Maya's history or any of the other kind of Maya related content that you would get if you opened up a Maya scene, you know, like the link to your references or any applied materials. You would export also material data that you've applied to the mesh, which we haven't done. So we just have the default material here, unless you're exporting into like Blender and then back out, and then I see the artifact and then I know you cheated. So don't do that. Don't do that. But the exports do also take out like that information. For example, let's say I applied a different material to his head that I did to his body. That would also be exported out with an FBX. Good question. All right. All right, so what we need to do is we need to fully unwrap our Bender bot. All right, so I mean, I've got his trash can body mostly resolved here. Now, some things that I want to sort of point out when we're unwrapping are some tools here in the UV editor. That down. Now, I've got this checker pattern that I turn on and off right here. And you can see it show up on my model on the left. What that does is it shows me any kind of weird stretching. UV stretching is what we call it. When the UVs start to match less, we get some weird artifacts. So first of all, like his arm here, for example, this is as if we had flattened it and laid it on top of it, like we had ironed it flat, and both the front and the back are taking up the same space, which is why we have this kind of symmetry happening on his arm. If I were to take maybe the front, just take like his front view here, and I pull it, you guys start to get some weird happening on the left over here. Isn't that weird? That's funky. So the checker pattern gives us two important pieces of information that I always check. Stretching. Do we have any kind of weird stretching happening? And resolution. Is one part of the model higher resolution than the other part of the model? Where you can see something like that happening is if, let's say, we took the trash can butt that he has, and this is much bigger, right? These clearly don't match in scale, right? Obviously. This is taking up way more space, which means it's getting more information on the file, right? On the PNG or the texture map. So if I were to look at it, you could see a much higher resolution of checker pattern than the rest of his body. Now, As a general rule, or we'll say guidance, you don't typically want that. You usually want your model to match in resolution. And the inevitable question, is there ever a reason why we wouldn't want that? Sure, there are reasons for that. I don't see that happening here. But for example, if you're working as an environment artist and you've been tasked with making a giant statue in a temple, and you model the statue as one piece, I would prioritize the texture resolution of the feet over the head because of the view of the player. So if I have a player walking up to a statue, I would have the feet and the bottom part of it have a much higher resolution and a much more detailed material than I would the head that's further away. So that's an example. I'm kind of pulling from thin air that I might like use the resolution to a slightly different advantage, or if I want to prioritize another part of the model for some visual reason, right? But otherwise, it's safe bet to just keep everything to scale with itself. Yes, question.
So I saw that when you have a higher resolution, you have a tighter grid.
Mhm.
Is there like 1 square equals X pixels? That's something that's said.
It's not explicit. You can set it, but these texture exports, they are actually, the resolution is resolved in wherever you're making material. So in Substance Painter, we can have a 512 by 512 pixel screen or pixel map, or a 2K. And Maya doesn't really care. But it is, but that texture map is set from 0 to 1. So we have to make sure all of it is in 0 to 1.
More a ratio.
Yes, it's more of a ratio. Very good. All right, so I'm gonna just put that out of the way, and we're gonna work on another piece of him. Let's do his leg. Let's do his leg. Legs are nice because they're super easy, and if you forgot to delete his cap, the caps on top of his feet, right, or legs right here, like I did, simply select the top, deselect these guys right here, excuse me, and so I've got them selected, and then delete. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, here's the thing. If you delete them from the UV channel with this active, or from the UV editor with this being active, it doesn't actually delete the geometry. It just deletes the UVs. So you want to make sure you have the 3D view active when you delete it so you can delete the geometry itself. Now, when you're deleting UVs, all you're really doing is saying all pixels go to 0. That's really what you're saying. You can't see it anymore. It's not helpful to anyone. So that's where the create comes in handy. If you accidentally delete some UVs, we can just create them again. It's not the end of the world. Okay? All right, cool, cool, cool. Make sure I do that again at the bottom down here. Gross. Delete those. Don't want that. If I can't see them, I don't have to delete them, or I don't have to unwrap them. Like why, you know? Like why have them? Delete. Okay, so I've got legs here, legs here. I think these guys are really easy to imagine a shell. If I just cut a little seam down the back of his robot stocking, we can pull it apart to the side. I think that works for me. So I'm going to come back here on Bender's mesh and using the edge selection. I'm going to select the edge I want to cut as if I'm cutting with scissors. We'll go down to cut stow, click cut, and now you can kind of see I've got a seam there. Next, we're going to pretend that this is bundled up fabric, and we're going to unfold it, unfold it. Come on down here to unfold, unfold. There we go. Looks like these guys are on top. That's great. They start to look like pant leg patterns if you do it right. Well, quote unquote, right. All right, so that's done. Legs are done. Let's feetsies, little tootsies. These ones, if you did not put geometry at the bottom, you don't really have to worry about that. If you did, I'll go ahead and add some here so I could show you how I would unwrap it. I'm not going to mark you down if you don't put geometry here, but some of you will want to. Why would we want to? If we're just putting Bender as like standing on a piece and he's static, he's not moving at all, we wouldn't really need the geometry down there. If we're going to animate Bender walking, we will see the bottom of his feet, and so we will want to have geometry back there. So the question, usually the answer is, are we supposed to? Should we do that? Is that good practice? The answer is it depends. It depends. It depends. So if you wanted to have feetsies down here, and you don't, we can just go ahead and just extrude the edge on inside. And then what I like to do is not fill hole, but this here, merge to center. Whoop. And that'll put a little point right in the middle. That is what we do. What we do not do is fill hole. Does anybody know why? Why is this okay and not this one? This is okay and this one isn't? Big fuzzy n-gon? Big old nasty n-gon? Big old 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 nonagon? Yeah, we don't want that guy. That's not what we want. We want this. So I'll just hold down shift and extrude in, and then go to merge to center, which is this guy looks like a bullseye right there. Whoop. And we're good. Cool. Now, what's kind of nice is that I actually have, oh, that's terrible. You can see that I got like these weird cleats he gave me. That's okay. We can select those though, and bring it back to square one. Remember, the step process, it's not very linear. It's more cyclic, right? And so this is a problem. It's icky, and we start with create. But I can probably do this to all of them. Why don't I go ahead and move all of these up here so that I can select these? And this is the only part I really want to redo. I don't want to redo the foot. I don't want to redo the legs. So we'll go down to create. Okay. I left mouse clicked, which is terrible because it's flat, right? Don't want that. Oh, top down though, on the y-axis is pretty good. And I mean, shoot, that's almost done. That's great. Now, I would say these guys are mostly unwrapped. They're just kind of off on their resolution for each other. So if I were to select these and go ahead and unfold them, this is what I get. I get a little oblong shape. I think that's okay. If we don't like the stretching that's happening on his feetsies, we can go ahead and make the cuts here and here. And that'll give us a little bit more relaxing space. Yeah, just a little bit. I think that's okay. Okay. Oh, did I do the wrong? I did the wrong. I did the feet. It's not what I wanted to do. I was like, why isn't it listening? At the back of his feet, that's back here. You and you. These guys are the bottom of the feet. These guys are what I want right there. Okay. Boop, boop. Unfold. Yeah, all right. So it'll stretch a little bit less. Now, whenever we make cuts like this, we're creating something called a seam. Have you guys seen seams on assets when you're playing PlayStation 2 games? PlayStation 3 games? Probably even AAA games now, right? So this is what a seam looks like on a 3D asset. If I was just going to go to seam on 3D model, let's see what it looks like. No, those are 3D prints. Okay, on 3D model material. Nope, still going to give me that. Well, here we go. Here's a good one. We get these like weird sort of seam-like artifacts on the material. And are they okay? It depends is also the answer. If you don't see them, they're fine. They're fine. Sometimes they hide inside other models. Sometimes they're just placed in a part of a model that the player or the viewer won't see, and that's also okay. But also, the material editors that we have nowadays, you lucky duckies, have a lot of ways to resolve this for you without you needing to think too critically anymore of where you want to place your seams. However, in a time where that wasn't the case, and depending on the tools that you have access to, being deliberate about where you place your seams is a very helpful thing. On a character, for example, it might make total sense to have a seam where you would have a literal seam on fabric, because it'd be okay, or a little bit more okay, that the pattern doesn't match perfectly there. It would give it some realism, right? So my philosophy about choosing seams kind of come down to two things. Do I want this is this very visible? Is it kind of hidden? Which I'll elevate that. Or if it's not hidden, is that okay? That's kind of the two questions I'm asking myself. If you use things like automatic unwraps, they do not take into account those nuances. So don't do them, is the answer. Don't do them. They're not bad for a quick unwrap. And if you're making an indie game where they don't really care because maybe the shader is a flat color or some kind of gradient or cute, whatever, okay, that's a perfectly good example of this, but it's horrible standard practice otherwise. Cool? Cool. All right. So I got this guy. These two, let's scale them down. Now I'm just scaling them down so they match the resolution of the rest of the model just a little bit better. And I'd say these guys are done. These guys are done. Okay, the shoulders. Well, I mean, for me, they're separate pieces, so I could probably just get away with unfolding, and we're pretty good. If you have them attached, simply make the cut where you feel like it's most appropriate, probably about where his shoulder, his arm would come off of his shoulder. Like if there was a seam right there, I'd probably cut it right there. You know. Now his arms. Arms. These are pretty straightforward. I think you guys could do this on your own if I asked you to, but I'll just show you how anyway. I am going to separate the hands because if I remember correctly on his material, these are very different materials. I think we can get away with a seam being there. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, let's select the part I want to be a seam. Now, some of you, well, what if I want it to be like welded? Yeah, then you can leave them stitched together. That's okay. Like if you were gonna do in the material like a welding kind of like mark where somebody literally took a metal welder to it, I could totally get that. Then leave them stitched together for sure. I'm not gonna do that though. I'm going a little more stylized. So I'm gonna make a cut right there. I got his little hands. I'm going to start off with the easiest part, his arms. And to me, and tell me if you guys disagree, the inside part of his arm seems like the safest seam, like the inside right there. All right.
Stuffed animal.
Right? That's where you probably would put it on a stuffed animal. Absolutely. I noticed too that I've got some geometry up here, and I think that that means I've got caps. I've got caps on them. So let me go to them in here. Ew, delete, nuke them, don't want them. It's totally okay if you delete some of that during the unwrapping process. I find them like this all the time, but I just don't want to deal with that. So we're not gonna. All right, so there we go. Inside, do a little cutsies. Select them both and unfold. Nice. They look like a sleeve pattern to a shirt almost. Almost. A human shoulder has a little bit more of a curve at that shoulder. If anybody makes their own clothes, you'd see that. Yeah. You need to finish unwrapping him first before you bring him to substance. That is not unwrapped. That is very much not unwrapped. Okay. So what's happening here for some folks is that like, well, I put him all inside the 0 to 1 space. If his head is like this, what is happening is that it's the same as this. We don't want that. We need to make sure that we don't have UVs overlapping other UVs right now, especially when we do a bake. Super important. Yeah. No. Your cut tool isn't working. Let's see. Oh, hold on. No, I think you're okay. We just might have a visual here. Ooh. What is happening? We're gonna turn off symmetry. We're gonna go to the UV toolkit. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. It's right here. Uh-huh. Oh, you have a tool on. It's because you have whatever this is. I'm not sure what tool this is. It's okay. Oh gosh, it's like making geometry too. Okay, so we're gonna select that now. Cut. There. Okay, it is working. You're fine. Happens to the best of us, man. Like we have a tool turned on, and so like we're trying to do something else. Oh man, I get it. I think sometimes I'll hotkey out of it without thinking because it's happened to me so many times. The hotkey I use is W. That's the move tool. Just like when in doubt, try hitting W and see if it starts to behave. Okay. Okay. So are we a little bit more clear about why this is not unwrapped, but these are? Cool. Wonderful. All right. So this guy's not unwrapped because this guy is it's the same as if it were like this, both sides. So let's go ahead and give him just a little bit more finesse, shall we? I think it's going to be this side, and not that. Just that cut right there, and this guy. You can actually cut more than one shell at a time if you're thinking about it. I'm going to do that in this case. So let's do a little cut right there. And this guy needs some help. If I try to unfold it right now, yeah, Maya's like trying, but it makes it a little tiny. So go ahead and create that to a planer. And now we can unwrap both of these together. We got the hand done right there. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little trick, especially those who are just a little bit like hating unwrapping. So I'm going to delete the one that's not fully unwrapped. And this guy over here, I'm going to separate. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a trick that you might love. You might appreciate this. If I were to take just the arm here that's unwrapped, right? We know we've unwrapped it. And I go over to mirror. And I go ahead and apply that mirror, right? It will save the unwrap information for me too. So with symmetrical stuff or repeating things, you can actually go in and like during the modeling process, do a quick little unwrap of that thing and then mirror it. So you don't have to hurt your brain about this too much later. Now, technically though, this is inverted. So you might want to do a quick look so it puts it in the right direction because it is mirrored, which means it'll mirror on the material too. So you'll want to just like kind of flip it. Now, I do an unfold and reorient it. That's what I did. You can also go transform right over here and do flip. Flip. That'll do the same thing. Cool. Take that with you. Take that with you if you would like. Okay. Cool. The visor. The visor. Now, this is okay. What you can do here is you could keep this pretty simple, right? I think of it as like the outside and the inside, almost like I did the barrel or the cylinder. So I'm gonna make a cut right around the top there. So we'll cut. Move this guy over here. And because this is an infinity scarf and we hate those are out of style, we're gonna go ahead and cut that there, make it a regular scarf. And I think both of these should unfold fine. Oh, I didn't cut it. My bad. Oh, you know, when I'm looking at this, it kind of wants to be cut on the side here, doesn't it? Well, let's cut them on the side then. Unfold. Oh, that's pretty nice. Not upset at all. Looks good to me. If you want them to be cut, oh, did I cut it on the tops? Oh, I did. I don't love that. I want you to be stitched together. Okay. So I made a cut that I didn't love, right? And I want it to come back together. Now, just like cut, we can sew and do the inverse. I'm going to show you a couple of sewing tricks here. If I hit sew, it just does that, and then an unfold will solve that. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Unfold, pretty normal. But different from these other sews. Stitch together is kind of cool because what it does is it moves them together and almost lets us skip that, right? Careful with this though, because if they're scaled funny, one will be like smaller than the other one. But I almost think explicitly use the stitch together when I'm using a problem like this or solving a problem like this. And I am happy with that visor. So you move that out of the way, all coming together quite nicely. Eyeball, eyeballs. What happens to the best of us? I'm going to select this unwanted geometry. And in the 3D space, just delete it so that it's gone completely. And when done, I think with care, like I had hoped to do, I don't really need to do much else but unfold it. I'll just unfold it. Cool. Looks like I have a little bit more geometry than I need. How about I select, whoop. Can't see them. Oof. They're in there, but you can't see them. Just delete it. There you go. Just to make sure that I didn't accidentally. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Eyeballs. Good. Yeah. Eyeballs. Okay. The head. The head, I really feel is probably the scariest part for a lot of you guys. Reasonable. His teeth are a totally different material than the rest of him. So I think there's nothing wrong with maybe just cutting his teeth out in the UV, in the UVs, not in the geometry, right? So over here to cut, face select, move his teeth away. Unfold and teeth are done. Cool, cool, cool. We can, I think, cut his antenna off because that's going to pull funny when we try to relax it. So I'm going to cut there too. And we've got like a separate piece for his antenna. And just like the rest of him, we can decide if we want to have like a side and have a front and a back, or maybe slice down the back and it kind of come to the front. I think either is fine. Let's see what both look like. If I were to choose the back of the skull, let's do a quick cut. Face, unfold. I mean, it makes sense. It's like a Bender mask, a Bender Halloween murder mask. Slightly uncomfortable. Totally fine. This is good. I mean, it's not like fantastic, but there's not a lot of stretching or pulling on his checker pattern. A little bit, but not too bad. So if you wanted to do maybe like a front and a back side, because I don't know, maybe it feels like it'll stretch less. You might be right. Let's select both of those now and we'll do a quick little unfold. And there you go. You got a front and a back. This is also okay. This is also okay. When I'm doing really organic shapes, I'll sometimes do that and then stitch along the side on one of them and kind of relax it from there. That looks like animal pelts, which start to, I guess, make sense when you think about it. But this is fine. This is fine for Bender. Either will be acceptable. Whichever one you feel in your heart is what you want to follow. And then finally, well, we got two little pieces still. We've got his fingies and his antennae. You could get really intricate with the antenna if you wanted to, but I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to do that. It's so little that I think if we just make a slice right up the back, a little cut there, and a little unfold, this is great. This is fine. This is absolutely fine. It's mostly a flat cut. I mean, unless your camera was going to come in here for some reason and look at Bender's antenna at this perspective, you really don't need to go into too much detail about that unwrap. Cool? Okay. Now, the fingies. Okay. Try to think of this as a box that unfolds. because it's literally a box. If you have cylinders, you know how to do this. You just unwrap the cylinder and have a cap and you're good. That will work. That will work. But for those of us that have little squares in here, what you'll want to do is you're going to want to do a cut around the cap from every side except one. We'll leave one connected, and then one up the side. Okay? Oops. Let's do a cut. And then this guy, do a little unfold. There you go. Does that make sense? All the way around and then just a little flap. That's all we're doing. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm gonna just select one edge up the slide, right? And then all but one on the cap. That's all we're doing. It's like a little formula, which makes sense if you think about it for a minute, but I hate to think too hard myself. Let's do a little cut. Whoop. All of those, let's do a little unfold. Whoop. Oops, I missed one, but that's okay. We'll just cut that guy right there. Cut. Unfold. I think it's kind of funny how sometimes his fingers look like they're flipping you off. I'm immature. Okay. Yeah, like these kind of make sense when you think about it, right? You can do them all at once. You can do them one at a time. If you're like, okay, I see that you did it. It's not making sense to me. During lab time, poke me and I will come help you. But now we're in the layout phase. We're in this layout phase, and I'm going to show you guys something that's going to make you really happy. If you scroll on down to arrange and layout, we can do a quick orient shells. And what that will do is for all the shells you have selected anyway, it'll kind of straighten them out a little bit. Sometimes it straightens them out like a whole 90 degrees and you might want to adjust that, but it's up to you really. And then we can hit layout. Well, that's cozy. Sure is. And if you don't care where Maya puts it, this is great. Should I care? That depends on your brain. Sometimes people are like, I care more about this being done, in which case, fantastic. Sometimes when we hand paint, we really need to know where these objects are so that we can paint them and have more context about it and organize it accordingly. What I usually do is I will start with this and maybe reorganize it how I want. You can get friggin' really beastly with the layout tool. If you go to tools, sorry, just kidding. Oh, where is layout? Excuse me. Yeah, modify, excuse me, Control L layout. Click this little dialog box. And down here, you can actually start to do some customization of this layout. Like, let's say you want his head and body to be taking up a fourth of the map. You can have it lay out at that spot and you can kind of organize where you'd like them to stand. Now, I'm not gonna make you do all that right now. This is more of a tool for those of you that are like ready to explore this. But I will say, if you are going to use the layout tool, do yourself a favor and give yourself some padding. I already have padding because I've done this before. You guys probably don't, which means the shells will be touching each other, which means when you paint it, it's going to be really hard to differentiate which pixel is coloring which shell, right? So before you just kind of do a layout and call it a day and say, I did it, I was paying attention, come in here to this layout UV options again, and that lives under modify layout right there, this dialog box, and scroll on down to layout settings and look for padding units. You can click pixels if that makes sense to you. And give yourself between 5 and 10 pixels if you have a 1K image. If you have a 5K, 5 should be fine. 10K, give yourself between 5 and 10. Now I'm going to give myself 10 just to kind of make my point. And there you go. I've got more pixel space in between each shell. That's not, oh, I actually kind of like how I did it better. Now, it didn't do padding off of the edges though, did it? Let's come back here to modify, layout. Let's see here, tile padding. Tile padding is the border. So I want to give that five pixels, not 50, 5. Why? Oh dear, it only did it to one piece because I wasn't paying attention. Why? And now I've got a little bit of break on the corner there. Cool. All right. Yes.
That's really tight there like that. Wasn't that not maximize resolution efficiency?
This maximizes resolution efficiency. So what maximizes resolution efficiency is also optimizing your use of memory, and your programmers will appreciate that you do this. Because if you don't do this, you will remain a junior and might not be able to keep your job. So please pay attention to this. Memory is extremely important when we're talking about optimization. And texture maps, the way they work is that they use kind of like a number slot system. Think of it like that in floats, right? That's why we have 512, 1024, 250, 2048, et cetera. We go up as power of 2. So let's say that you're using a 1K texture resolution. It's 1024 by 1024. If you save 5, it will be taking up the same amount of memory as a 2048, regardless of whether or not you use it. So a lot of wasted memory happens when we don't use the right resolutions of our texture maps, which Substance will take care of for you. And when you don't use the negative space in your UV maps. Because remember, every 3D model you put in your project is a new file with new texture UV space. And if you're using like a third of the space in here for 5 assets, how many more pixels of memory are you occupying that you don't need to? And you're bogging down. This is why sometimes you get games and they're like 64 gigs when they should be like 10. Artists gobble memory. They bleed memory from projects. So this is extremely important that we're paying attention to what designers will affectionately call negative space in our UV coordinate map. So great question. Glad you brought that up, and I'm happy I bored you guys with that computer science. Yeah.
Is that because most of the something like C++ will be
Basically, yes, is the short answer, but it depends on the shader. Shaders will use texture maps differently, and bitmaps will also come into play. So for each pixel, there is 1 to 4 numbers that it's calculating, depending on the actual shader itself. And depending on how it's also implemented, Unreal does it differently than Unity. But for the most part, standard optimization practices will be greatly appreciated on all fronts. Yeah, I think one of the biggest I'll say criticisms of juniors when looking to hire someone is that they need to figure out if you know that or not. They need to know if you understand that. So, you'll see like portfolios that look gorgeous, right? And like that's all we see when we're looking at 3D art, I think, at first. But when you start to see how well people can bake a high resolution, high poly model into a low poly, nice, clean, topologized, maximized use UV, they're starting to see that you understand that philosophically. But then like one step further is like, yeah, but how can a project handle like 50 of your assets? Like I can see that it can handle 1, but what do you do when assets get really populated? So one of the ways to do this, side note, is make a mobile app. Make a mobile scene, get it to run on your phone, and have that be one of your portfolio pieces. And then you've answered the question that you know how to optimize, because you won't be able to get that thing to run otherwise. Cool. So I'm gonna talk about all that. That's like way too much, but so get your unwraps to look like this. And this is what I'm looking for when I'm grading. I basically look at your model and I turn on the checker pattern and I look for 2 things. Is there like an unholy amount of stretching? That's like this. That's like this. Is there stretching? A little bit of curvature, fine. But do you have stretching? Do you have overlapping UV? That's what I'm looking for. And do you have inappropriate amount of negative space? So those 3 things are the things I'm really looking for when it comes to your grade. And it's okay if it's not as tightly organized as mine. You can have them tumbled or whatever. I'm not gonna tell you how to print, right? But I want to make sure that you don't have a lot of excess space. Nothing is overlapping and nothing is stretching. That's what I'm looking for. So Right. So that means this is unacceptable. If this is you, and here's why, there's a lot of unused negative space. That's why. Okay, cool. Questions? Wonderful, wonderful. I'm gonna let everybody kind of chill for about 20 minutes, then we're gonna go into substance painter, all right? And I'll come around and help you. Zooming recording. All right, so here's the thing, guys, is that I know a lot of you are really trying to solve this unwrap thing. And it's a whole thing, and I get it. And if you have absolutely no interest in learning or following along how to paint this thing, I recommend continuing to work on your unwrap. But I know some of you are like, well, I have to get this done to get to the next step. I hear you and I see you. So what I've done is I've provided you with an example, my Bender model unwrapped on Canvas for you to download, and we can use this as your follow along if you would like to follow along the painting process. Most of you really want to get this part, right? Like you're excited about this part for the most part. So if you're not ready, you may take my model and follow along with me in the demo today. Here. Now, do not take my model and use it as your Bender model. I will know, so don't do that. Please don't do that. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions on grabbing that. Yeah.
Some circle. How can I find which one or which part in painting?
Well, okay. Okay. When it's in zero space, 0 to 1, it will live in the texture map here.
Yeah.
So,
But after that, I have one.
right, you will in the layout phase. So I think what you'll have to do is you're gonna have to go back and review what was recorded because that was part of the lecture. When you're done cutting and unfolding and unwrapping, you could use the layout tool, which will put them all into 0 to 1, or you can manually place them in 0 to 1.
No, she's asking, there are a lot of the circles.
Uh-huh.
She's wondering how she'll know which circle is which. When
Yeah.
she gets into the painter.
So that's a good question. In Substance Painter, they will be related. So when you paint on one, you'll see it on the other. You don't have to memorize it. Thank you for that. That help? Good. Uh-huh. Wonderful. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and leave this up because sometimes I get little buggies. Now, let's say that you have finished unwrapping Bender, and you will finish. Exporting him to being a file type that you need is actually really important. Saving him as a Maya file is not gonna work. We'll need either an FBX or an OBJ. And it is also important that he is smooth where he needs to be smooth, and hard-edged where he needs to be hard-edged, however you decide to do that. This is not really appropriate, is like having him be completely hardened all over. This is not good, not great. Now, for context on that, you'll want to review the stuff that we've recorded or have a meeting with me and I'll walk you through it. So if you have questions about that, please reach out. Okay, so to export him, make sure you have him selected, object mode, go to File, Export Selected, and then choose FBX. Okay. There will be an occasion where an FBX file is acting funny, bringing it into Substance Painter. Then go ahead and try OBJ. But basically, FBX is an Autodesk proprietary, now standard industry file type that everybody recognizes. So we use it. It holds a little bit more information. OBJ is kind of like the JPEG version of a 3D model. It's very compressed. So you'll sometimes lose data that you don't want to lose, like UV data. So we don't really default to OBJ, but OBJ is also used kind of across the board. So FBX is what you're looking for. Name him, save him, export him. And make sure that you export him somewhere you'll remember. Now we're going to go to Substance Painter when you're ready. New, and we're going to use the Unreal 4 starter assets. We probably won't get so far as to actually use them, but that's the standard template we're going to be using. Select that Bender file that you exported or downloaded to follow along today. Okay? Import. Cool. All right, there's Bender. Now the question, how will I know with all these circles, which one is which? Well, we can actually paint right on it and you can actually see which one is being painted on. No? Right up here. Ooh, see, I can see it. See, that's how we can find it. Yeah. All right. Now, we're going to get a little cozy with this. I highly recommend grabbing a walk-on tablet if you're going to try to follow along today. If you have your own, wonderful. This material also is going to be hand painted, but we're going to bake it. Baking process. Now, when making the materials that will be eventually on him, we're going to have a set of assets that accumulates that material. We'll have a color file, a bump file, a metallic file, a whole bunch of files that are going to inform the different stuff that we do. And that's what we export out of here. We're done. Now, Substance Painter has a process called baking where we will create a few files also that Substance Painter is going to reference inside your own projects. And we do that through baking. Now, to bake, there's a few ways to get there. You can click the little croissant button at the top right corner, or you could go to mode and click baking, bake mesh maps, or you can hit F8. All will get you there. And then we have this little window of Blender. We're not going to bake on any high resolution detail from another model. That would be a lot more work. So we don't want to do that yet. But we are going to bake him to himself. So let's go ahead and stick this to 2048 as a resolution because it looks better. Then click use low poly mesh as high poly mesh. Now it's worded this way because the standard practice is that we bake a high poly mesh to a low poly mesh. We did not make a high poly mesh, so we're not doing that. We're going to bake him to himself. Why? Why does that matter? Well, because there's other information besides just high detail of resolution on geometry that we're taking from, like ambient occlusion, like world space orientation, whole bunch of cool stuff that you probably don't need to think about too much, but it's super fun to get curious about. So click use a low poly mesh as high poly. And we're not going to change anything else. Okay. And this is the only time in this class we're going to do this. Otherwise, everything further here is going to have a high poly mesh. So let's go ahead and click bake selected textures. And you're going to see Blender turn colors. Lots of funky colors. Yes, yes. All of those colors are different maps. They're different informations that Substance Painter is going to use, that we're going to use, actually. Now, if I come back here to the paint mode, which is a little button down here, you'll notice that there's all this information now on Blender. Like he's got like the shadow baked onto him. And if you look closely, we have kind of like a shadow presence around him here. We've got like a little bit of fall off here. He looks a little bit more grounded in at least some reality, right? Like light can't hit those cracks. So we've got this nice sort of gradient off of them. In order to look at his eyeballs, see how it kind of shades, how it falls off on the inside here? Now this is kind of important. Now, remember, we used masks before to occlude color and to set these things. Well, Substance Painter is also going to use these maps as masking tools to create other effects, okay? So let's start with some two simple effects. I'm going to start with Bender Metal, right? And you can pick any color metal you want, really, if you want to. I'm going to just go click a fill here. I'm going to choose a color that's probably a little bit more Bender's color from the reference, just slightly, like a slight blue. Maybe I'll intensify it a little bit for you guys on the screen. And I'm going to turn up the metallic feature, so he's very metallic. He's like a blue metal. We could go in and change some other color if you want, and we will. But here's the stuff I really want to show you. Okay. Now, I want to create a grunge, a dinge, a kind of dirt that accumulates in his cracks and in his teeth and in his stuff. Because one of the most, we'll argue amateur things that a 3D model could be is pristine and clean. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for that, like advertising a perfect sneaker in a 3D animation for a commercial, totally different experience. But when we're looking at telling story, for the most part, we usually want to tell story on the model too. So clean meshes are kind of a clue that it feels undone. And we're going to fix that. So I'm going to make another map here, another fill, and we're going to make dirt. Just keep it real simple. We're not going to do anything fancy. I'm going to make it kind of dingy, like a yellowy brown, maybe. Ew, maybe not that dark. A little warmer, like mud. It'd be lighter if it was dust or dirt, but like dirt, right? This is too shiny, way too shiny. So we want it to be more rough, as like dirt, like dust. It's flat, I know, but bear with me. Now how do I use the maps? Well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back over here and we're gonna apply a black mask like we did before. And as you know, when you apply a mask, it hides whatever the mask is on, right? And if I wanted to, I could paint in where I might want some dirt or grunge. That's gross. Wouldn't it be cool though, if we could use something a little bit more powerful and Substance can do this for us, because that's what we're gonna do. Now, right here, when you've got the black mask selected, I want you to right click, that's the middle finger, right click, add generator. Now, generators come in all shapes and sizes. I want to use a dirt generator. It's one of my favorites. If I click the little generator button and I type in dirt, there we go. It's going to take the mask that was baked from our model and apply a kind of automatic grunge to our model. Like already that's looking kind of gnarly, right? Can you see that? I think I'm gonna make the dirt a little lighter color. You can really see it. I can't turn them off. They're all off. They're all off. I can't turn them off. I know, I hate it. But like, maybe you could see it a little bit better. I don't know, like, yeah. So you can even see how the dirt and the grunge start to fill in the places on Bender here. Right? Okay. Now, well, dirt's cool, but what if I wanted to do kind of a different effect? I couldn't agree more. We can change this. You can actually remove it, or you go to where the generator lives. So if you click the mask, the black mask right here, and then click dirt, you can actually alter or change the generator to something else. Let's look at a couple of other generators to see if there's something here you might like. Fiberglass is kind of fun. Kind of creates this fiberglass texture across your map. Or metal edges. You guys love metal edges. Thing is though about metal edges is it's usually inverted, right? We usually want to apply metal edges to a metallic. So what it looks like is that anywhere that you might have painted over metal, the paint has worn off to reveal the metal underneath. That's metal edges, right? So for your assignment, what I want you to do is spend some time painting Bender as you see fit, right? And we can start with just some simple color stuff. Delete all that. We can choose a color that suits him, right? You can actually pick any color you want, but I'm gonna stick to the reference as close as I can from memory, right? I'm going to use a paint here, and I think I'm gonna pick a slightly different color. Now I'm using a paint layer. Let's pick, scroll on down, a color that's similar to Bender here, but maybe a little bit darker for his legs and arm. And we can use the polyfill. Oops. Like that about it. Polyfill. Now, yeah, I know you could like hand select all of the polygons that you want, but I'm gonna pick, oh, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna like, boop. Select the parts of Bender's legs and arms to give that nice color change. He should also have different colored teeth, I think. So maybe we'll pick like a kind of, well, we can start with white, but usually it's like a cream color. I don't think it's technically white. We're gonna do his teeth next. Just to kind of get that color feeling right. Maybe you want his eyes to be glassy and they can have their own layer. can really kind of go in there. Now, what if I want to add some like detail to him, like paint his teeth in or paint like the door? Totally, I hear you, I see you. How about I just add another here, and I'm going to call this line work, right? And using the paint tool, which is, by the way, hotkey number 1, we can pick a color that fits. Black is common, you can do that. And we can come over here and start to paint. Like I want, oops. Now to get a straight line, if you select a location, hold down shift and then like raise your hand, you can kind of draw a straight line that way. But it's not perfect. So if you want to maybe give yourself just a little bit of I don't know, help, we can, I think it's the not spacing, stroke opacity. There's like a flow. I don't think it's not flow. Well, maybe it is flow. No, that's too. Size, stroke opacity. Ah, distance? No. No, didn't help. Thought there was like a lazy tool in here somewhere, which we can do. But we can kind of come in here and actually add detail by hand if you'd like. His teeth. And come in here and paint them in. So spacing. Ooh, how come I'm getting like a weird, it won't. Oh, this is something that's really annoying that I want to show you guys. Sometimes when you're like trying to paint on something, it paints on other parts of the mesh when you don't want it to. See how it like got up there even though I'm painting on this? Totally annoying. And if that happened to you, I'm really sorry. You can fix that though when you have a brush selected. In my case, I've got this like standard brush right here. It's like this one, whatever. No, that's not the brush I had. It's like this one, basic soft brush. Click where it says alignment and change tangent wrap to UV. And now it'll like respect the UV and not impact other parts of the mesh. Super handy. Let's see if that helps. So now, yeah, we could just add some teeth. Get in here. Yeah. Badly. Get in here badly. Pretty sure that there's a way to ease in, ease out. Oh, that's symmetry. Yeah. All right, so add some teeth to that. We can paint the door on. You can paint the door on directly onto him, or you can paint it here on the mesh itself, depending on where you made your cuts. This is great. I think I actually like it sloppy. Put in here sloppy. Beautiful. Beautiful. Cool. If you're looking to kind of level up how some of the materials really feel more hand painted style, I want to show you or demonstrate for you the toggling of applying paint and then smudging that paint, which will really make it feel kind of like you're pushing color in a really lovely way. So if I like kind of hide that line work, come in here with another brush here. And I want to apply some like cool highlights around the edges to make them like lighter anywhere light would hit or darker in the center parts. Love this stuff for us. Let's pick a brush first off that's kind of unconventional. Like this brush is kind of cool. It's not a good color, obviously. But if I were to take even a similar color to what I have, anybody do any kind of painting in like Photoshop or, you know, Procreate? You're having some fun with using multiplies and adds to those layers? Me too. So I'm actually going to pick the same color that I'm painting him with, just to keep it simple, right? And over here, I'm going to call this layer, I don't know, noise or highlight or yeah, like noise or shading, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it noise. And I'm going to start applying a little bit of that color here. multiply and I can kind of darken and like play around with this. What's also really nice is that I can reduce the intensity of it if I want to. So it's not so much. We can just add some subtlety to that. Now, I promised that I would talk about the smudging of this. So 1 is the brush tool. 2 is the eraser tool, which is super handy. And then 5 is the smudge tool. And smudge should also be kind of like a fun or soft artistic shape brush. If you use a hard brush for this, it doesn't really smudge nicely. It more like smears it. So I kind of like artistic Harry. That's kind of fun. Since it kind of like softens this for me. So we can come around here. Oops. My hotkeys for other stuff is getting to me. We can paint directly on him is another thing that I really love about this. Is that you don't actually have to paint on one side or the other. You can paint on both. You just kind of give him a little bit of nuance here. Now I'll do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of a multiply, I'm going to do something called overlay. No, that's a little too let's do add, color add, screen. Ooh, screen, that's nice. Screen. Let's tone that down. Tone you down a little bit. So I can get a nice little highlight. Nice little highlight. And I can paint. I can paint my highlights around the edges if I want to. And maybe the highlights are a little intense, where you don't really want them quite that aggressive. Just turn it down. Turn it down. Now, if you wanted a lot of control, using fill layers and masking will allow you to like change the color shift almost completely that way. Be a lot of fun. I'm not going to really get on your case too much about this, but I wanted to show you this technique because so many of you were asking questions about it after the barrel. You like saw that you could change the barrel's material, but you're like, how do we add more fun to this? This is the start. Kind of doing like a color pass where you would add a little bit of depth onto your model here. And then for sure, making sure, because this assignment does call for it, you have another material that you'd use a generator. Now, I'm not going to tell you which generator to use. I showed you dirt. Dirt is fun. Dirt's a lot of fun. You could use metal edges. I think metal edges might work kind of cool with something like this, because if he was like a plastic toy that was metal underneath, it would look something like this. So let's apply metal, like a metallic all the way there. Sure, dingy. Black mask. Add generator. Metal edges. Yeah. His metallic underbelly is starting to come through our nice little paint that we did, right? What's kind of nice about this is that you can kind of go in there and make the metal funky and dirty and dingy if you wanted, or darker, or I don't know, or purple. You can make an iridium bender that is painted. You can have some fun with that. Yes. Well, it's still being recorded, so not yet. It's not uploaded in the module, is the short answer, but it will be when it's rendered. Yeah. There was actually an interesting point. Somebody said that like the part 3 last week wasn't working. It was. You have to click on this right here and it'll take you to it. So this is a Canvas bug. It's just not loading in Canvas, but the link is correct and the link is working. So I don't know why I did that. Sorry if that was you. I'm really sorry. I don't know what else to do about it. So weird. I thought I already fixed that to be in a new window and it didn't do it. No, it's the same one. I mean, refresh it maybe. I don't know. Nope. Maybe it was a different one. Edit. Load in a new tab. So hopefully that won't be a problem anymore. It's a button now. Yeah. It's gross. Yeah. Okay, so I want to see how far you take your Bender paintings. You know, you can paint him like a toy, you can paint him like a real robot, you can paint him stylized as you like. The takeaway is though, is that I want to see an appropriately applied generator that is informed by a bake. You can't just use a generator without a bake. See, like these edges around his body, his trash can body, is using information from the bake. Without that, it would just be like a flat pattern all over his body, right? So that's really what I'm looking for. Okay, any questions? Okay, wonderful. So we have about 15 minutes left in class. I'm gonna give back to you guys, help you answer some of your questions. Oh, no, I can't do that. We have a few more, I think, details to cover on the assignment, and that is like how to submit. So you're gonna want to give me your Substance Painter render and your FBX export. I will also accept the Substance file over the FBX export. Those are both okay. But I need to take a look at those geometries. I'm gonna be looking at your UVs. Now, for the render, remember, all renders that we do are not screenshots. Screenshots are a fast track to 0 on a render. Renders are carefully computed. So just as a quick reminder, go to this little render mode right here, the camera. Choose a background that feels good for you. Now stage him. Let me show you how not to stage him. This is not how we stage him. This is how we can stage him. It's okay if he's a little 3/4 top down or a little bit angled down. That's okay. You can give him a little bit of a power shot. That's okay. You could get fancy. Give me some of that rule of thirds, left or right. We can get in there if you'd like. But I want to see a clear render. Choose a background that feels good for you. If you have any questions on that, reach out to me. And I noticed that there were a few questions on the showcase for the barrel. Why backgrounds weren't showing up? That it was because you were rendering a PNG, not not a JPEG. Either are acceptable though. I don't mark you down if you use the PNG. Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to give you the rest of class to finish, and I will share with you your in-class exercise shortly.